5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, liftoff.
Nominal power and telemetry.
So we are about a minute into liftoff. Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. In just a few seconds here, we are expecting the call out for max Q. That is the period where the vehicle will experience the highest amount of aerodynamic pressures.
Max Q.
And there was the call out. So now that we've gone past the period of highest stresses on the vehicle, we have 3 events happening in quick succession in about a minute. First, we have main engine cutoff, also referred to as MECO. Then stage separation, followed by second engine start 1, also known as SES1. Main engine cutoff is where all 9 Merlin engines on the first stage will shut down to slow the vehicle down in preparation for stage separation. During stage separation, the first and second stage will separate from one another. The first stage will make its way back to Earth for landing, while the second stage continues its journey with our satellites with the third event, which is second engine start 1. The single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will then ignite and continue to propel those Starlink satellites and Black Sky satellites into orbit.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
So you can see on screen we had successful main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and on the right-hand side of the screen, that is the single Merlin vacuum engine glowing red hot. On the left-hand side of the screen is a view of our first stage. I think we're getting some views of twilight right now as the sun has just set in the East Coast. In a few seconds, we are expecting fairing deploy, and that will expose the satellites to the vacuum of space.
Fairing separation confirmed.
We got the audio and video confirmation on the right-hand side of your screen. The fairing halves have deployed. We are going to attempt to recover those using our recovery vessel Bob later on in the mission. For now, the mission is going great. Again, the left-hand side is a view from the top of our first stage looking downward. You can see little plumes of gas coming out. That is nitrogen for our as part of our attitude control system to help orient the first stage booster properly as it makes its way back to attempt its 9th landing on our drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. Right-hand side is a view of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine, the 48 Starlink satellites, and the 2 Black Sky satellites that we had mentioned earlier. They are on the opposite end of that engine. And so again, they are going to be in this burn for another couple of minutes as they continue to make their way to low Earth orbit. So in order to make its way back to the drone ship, the first stage needs to execute 2 burns. The first is an entry burn where 3 of the Merlin 1D engines will ignite. This helps to slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere. The second burn is the landing burn. This is a single engine burn, and this will bring the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on our drone ship.
Trajectory nominal.
That first burn, the entry burn, is expected to start around T plus 6 minutes and 22 seconds and last for about 20 seconds. For those that are just joining us, we are in the middle of SpaceX's 27th mission of 2021. Both stages have separated. We did have a successful liftoff from Space Launch Complex 40. Things are continuing to go well for tonight's mission. So we are about 20 seconds away from the beginning of that entry burn on the first stage. We do have camera views right now. It is a little dark, but as soon as that entry burn starts, we should see that first stage being lit up as it'll slow itself down before hitting the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
Stage 1, interburn startup.
Drone flight termination system is safed.
All right, 3 engines have relit on the first stage. If you're keeping track, at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, there is a speedometer of sorts that is tracking the velocity of the first stage. You can see that we're starting to reduce that velocity.
Stage 1, entry burn shutdown.
If you keep an eye on that, as soon as the first stage hits the denser parts of the atmosphere, we'll continue to slow down its speed in preparation for the next burn, the landing burn. And that landing burn is expected to happen a few seconds after the T plus 8 minute mark.
Trajectory nominal.
The MVAC engine performance on the second stage continues to go well. A few seconds after we complete the landing burn, we are expecting to turn off this engine and enter a coast phase. And as a reminder, we will be reigniting this engine about 50 minutes from now.
Stage 1, landing burn.
So there's the call out. The landing burn has begun.
Terminal guidance.
In just a few seconds here, we're going to see if we can land this first stage booster for the 9th time.
Stage 1, landing leg deploy.
You can hear the cheer and the applause, and there's the visual. This first stage booster has landed 9 times. This marks our 89th overall successful recovery of a Falcon 9 first stage, and the 129th successful flight of a Falcon 9 first stage. So what we're waiting on now is confirmation of second engine cutoff, as well as confirmation of a good orbital insertion. As I was speaking, we did get that confirmation. So the second stage, with all of its satellites, are entering a coast phase for about 50 minutes. We're going to leave you with some space tunes, and we'll be back here at the T plus 59 minute mark. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, a quick recap of today's mission. We had successful liftoff from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station at 6:12 p.m. Eastern Time. We then had successful stage separation, recovered our first stage after its 9th flight on our drone ship a shortfall of gravitas and had a successful second stage MVAC engine burn. We're now waiting on the second relight of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine, and this burn should last just a few seconds.
MVAC ignition. Deco 2.
So we just saw that very, very short clip there. The Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage ignited for a few seconds. Then we also got confirmation of a good second engine cutoff. We are waiting on confirmation of a good orbit on the second stage. We are
Nominal orbit insertion.
a few minutes away from the first payload deploy, and we did hear the confirmation of good orbital insertion. That was a spectacular shot of the second stage with the Earth in the background. What the second stage does at deployment is actually largely determined by customer requirements and make sure that the payloads don't run into each other. For this particular mission, we have 2 rideshare payloads in addition to the Starlink satellite stack. The rideshare payloads are deployed while the stage is not spinning. Here they are on screen. By contrast, the Starlink stack is always deployed while spinning. Will actually spin at a rate at about 3 degrees per second. This creates a small difference in velocity between the individual Starlink satellites, allowing them to separate over time. So again, we are about 2.5 minutes away from the first Black Sky satellite from deploying. Again, we do have 2 of them on board today, and they will be deploying about 3 minutes apart from one another. And this shot right here, you can start to see the Starlink stacks. Some interesting notes about the Starlink. Each of those satellites are about 500 pounds. When we deploy them, we'll deploy them into low Earth orbit, but then over the next couple of days and weeks, they'll actually fire their onboard thrusters to get to their final operational orbit. The Starlink satellites operate at about 550 kilometers in altitude, and by contrast, the International Space Station is orbiting the Earth at about 400 kilometers. So the Starlink stacks are operating a little bit higher than the International Space Station. So again, we are waiting on the first deployment of the Black Sky satellite. It's going to happen about a minute from now. It is the first of 3 payload deployments. Our first and second payloads are about 3 minutes apart. Black Sky is a global monitoring company that combines space assets with advanced AI and machine learning analysis to provide customers a first-to-know advantage. For now, as we wait, we are enjoying some awesome views of the second stage, space, and the Earth. And as we continue to orbit around the Earth, we are trying to connect to ground stations here on the floor, and so we'll periodically lose some signals, but you can see that we're trying to get the signals back and the video footage back as much as possible as we hopefully can see the Black Sky satellites deploying from the top of the second stage.
Global 12 payload deploy confirmed.
So we did get audio confirmation. I am looking on screen right now to see if we can see it visually. Again, the 2 Black Sky satellites are actually positioned at the top of the stack, and so the objects, if you will, that are closest to the screen, those are the Starlink satellites. So we didn't quite get the visual confirmation of the first satellite. Maybe we'll get the second one. But again, we are about 3 minutes away from the second deployment of the Black Sky satellite. That one interesting thing to note as we continue to get this view here is in space and maybe without a point of reference, things seem to look very, very stagnant. If you look at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, we are actually traveling at 26,000 kilometers an hour around the Earth. And this is really this is close to orbital velocity, but at those speeds, you could pretty much travel end to end from America in about 10 minutes. So even though it doesn't look like we're moving very, very quickly, the second stage and the satellites are indeed zipping around the Earth. So right now, the second stage is actually just a little bit south and east of Australia. It's continuing to head east. And we are about a minute away from the second Black Sky satellite deployment. For those that are just joining, we did have successful deployment of our first Black Sky satellite. This is the 4th rideshare mission of 2021 for us here at SpaceX and the 27th mission overall. Just about 15 seconds away from our expected deployment of the second and final Black Sky satellite.
Global 13, payload deploy confirmed.
And that is great news. We've now successfully deployed the 2 Black Sky satellites on behalf of our customer spaceflight. We are wishing them bon voyage to the 2 Black Sky sats, and it was our pleasure to give you a lift today. With that, we are awaiting the deployment of our 48 Starlink satellites, which is scheduled to occur about 20 minutes from now. At the time of the deployment, we won't actually have ground station coverage, but we'll return just before we acquire a signal to the South Texas station about T+1 hour and 32 minutes to get confirmation of that deployment. We will see you back here in just a few moments. Welcome back one final time. If you're just joining us, we had a successful liftoff at 6:12 p.m. Eastern Time. We saw a successful stage separation. We saw second engine start and second engine cutoff successfully twice on the second stage. We were also able to land our first stage booster for the 9th time on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. And then about 20 minutes ago, we successfully deployed the 2 Black Sky satellites. We were expecting the Starlink satellites to deploy around the T+1 hour and 29 minute mark. And at that time, we didn't have ground station coverage. So right now, we should be coming in the range of South Texas ground station and getting confirmation of the Starlink satellites deploying. So I am hearing that we did indeed get confirmation of those 48 Starlink satellites deploying. That is the 34th launch of Starlink to date, which means that we've launched nearly 2,000 Starlink satellites thus far. With that said, all of the payloads on today's mission have reached their intended orbit. For now, we will be bringing our webcast to an end. Would like to thank the Range and Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's mission, and to our customer Spaceflight. And of course, thank you to all of our viewers and all of our Starlink customers using our service at this time. If you are interested in signing up for Starlink service, head over to starlink.com. Thank you again for watching, and we will see you next time.